Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast. Angus Johnson from LetUs, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. This is exciting. I know there's been esteemed guests on this show over the years. So,
you're definitely esteemed as well, mate. You've done a lot of good stuff. I've been following you on Instagram. The time has come to get you in, tell your story.
Yeah, I hope I live up to the expectations. As I say, there's been a lot of bigger, much higher flyers than me on this show over the years, but I'll try and do my best.
Right, if you listen to this, guys, we're going to come into the chat later on about HMOs specifically, because Angus, you're a specialist in that field. So if you are interested in HMO, then stick around for the chat. But first of all, always take it back a little bit to where did you grow up? Where you come from? Where did you go?
So obviously I've been in Scotland now for 11, 12 years, but I'm from Yorkshire originally. My parents are from Glasgow, so my roots are here. My dad's Aberfoyle, mum was in Bearsden. They moved down to set up their business, which was training racehorses, something totally different, in eventually Yorkshire before I was born. And then I was born and raised there, and got to 17 years old, was looking at UCAS, applying for unis and what I wanted to do. And Dad's exact words were, go to Scotland, don't come home without a Scottish wife. And so here we are.
Is that because it was free tuition fees to get us?
No,
not for English.
No, not for the English. Because I was born and raised in England, I consider myself Scottish despite the accent. Very proud, born and raised a Scot, go to Murrayfields and put on the tartan. But no, because I was raised in England, I had to pay full whack fees.
Where did you go to uni?
So I went to Strathclyde. My dad and my brother both went to GU, so there's a bit of Glasgow Uni. So there's a bit of rivalry in the household when I decided.
What did you do at uni again?
And then I did initially their business degree, and the way their business degree works, you end up specialising in your final year, and I specialised in finance. So my entire final year was essentially corporate finance, derivatives, etc. I wanted to go into investment banking and didn't make the cut. So the my fallback was accountancy. I did a year with PricewaterhouseCoopers, the biggest of the big four accountancy firms. They were very, very good to me, but it wasn't for me, essentially.
Well, that corporate environment.
Yeah, just asking for permission to do stuff. I've always been a bit of a free spirit, so having to ask for...
Did you realise that quite early on then, that this wasn't the right place for you?
Yeah, and my parents were adamant, like, stick it out. You know, get your chartered accountancy qualification, and then you'll be a CA for the rest of your life. And whatever you decide to do, that'll come in useful. But I got a year in. I passed 6 of the 11, the easiest 6 of the 11 exams, because they get harder as you go through. And I hit that second block of exams where they get a lot tougher, and I started failing the exams. And I thought, my heart's not in this.
How did you feel at that time then? Did you feel like it was a pressure from like your parents or all that, or did you feel a bit of a failure, or were they all right? Were they supportive, or were they like, come on, you need to knuckle down? And
very definitely knuckle down. Like they've always been. I've got an older brother, and for the pair of us, they've been big champions of if you work hard, you'll succeed. And so that's kind of been drummed into us from the outset. They grew their own business from scratch. With no kind of leg ups. And
what was that? The racehorses?
Yeah. So my dad essentially came from a council estate background. You know, didn't have any major advantages, but always loved horses. He got his veterinary degree. He was the first in his family to go to uni, and then always wanted to be a racehorse trainer. And they've taken that operation now to be one of the biggest certainly the biggest in the UK. They're one of the biggest training complexes in Europe. So they've done. I'm gonna name drop Dad now because he deserves it. Yeah. He has set the all-time record for UK and Irish, or UK specifically, racehorse winners in a career. So he trained over 5,000 racehorses to win a race.
So we're talking about like the big like Grand National horses and all that, no?
They're flat only, so they wouldn't train in the Grand National, but your Royal Ascot, which you see on the telly and the Queen and the King go to, would go to have runners in there. He's had 40-something winners.
What are your memories then of growing up in that? Like, what do you get dragged along to all the events and all that?
I had the privilege to go to lots of racing over the years and like meet the jockeys. Have you heard of Frankie Dettori?
Yeah.
So I would have met Frankie Dettori, cool. A couple of times a year when at the races with my parents. But the main takeaway was graft. Those horses eat and sleep and need exercise every single day.
So we bit of background to that industry. I presume that's like long hours. You're up first thing in the morning, looking at? Do they have to go in and obviously look after all the horses and that?
Yeah. And that is 6 o'clock in the morning start every day. From my childhood, my dad was going to bed at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week. No exaggeration. He was working, probably averaging 16, 17 hour days.
And does that's a common thing, isn't it, amongst business owners, and that they see that in their parents, and that obviously instills that kind of work ethic in them. So do you think that's had a big influence on you?
100%. And that comes into the independence as well. So obviously they worked extremely hard and they got the results to show for it. And so when I got to the kind of corporate culture at 22 years old, and I was looking at, this is the pay scale, and you do your 3 years and then you go up $6,000 in your salary, and you've got to tick this box and this box and this box. And I was going, I've just watched my parents do it with no rule book. Just work hard and earn the results over a 30-year career. I want to do that. And so
was there ever a point where potentially you were going to enter into that as well? No, that racehorse training? No? It's
because it is a 7-day a week, 365-day a year, completely intense job. You have to absolutely love it if you want to do it. And fortunately for our family, my older brother does love it. Right. And he's now taking over the family business. He's now the licensed trainer. Okay. So my parents are still involved day to day, but my brother's making the horse decisions, the equine decisions. He's also a qualified vet. And it wasn't my passion. Yeah. And so that's why I went down the kind of the corporate, the financy route. And
you're the black sheep of the family.
I am. I'm up in Glasgow by myself, trying to forge my own
path. To the wrong uni. Didn't go and get a vet.
You're doing all right there, man. You're doing
anything to annoy them. Anything.
That's it. So at that point where you bailed out of the corporate life, then what was the options to you?
Yeah. So I'd always been passionate about music, and I'd done that from school. Played guitar, played a little bit of piano, and did a lot of singing. Singing was my kind of main instrument. And so from my last year of uni, and then all through my first year working with PwC, I was doing weddings. Got called in about 4 months into my PwC job because the director of the Glasgow office, just like 300 employees, had been told I had a second job, and they were worried that I was pretending to be an accountant and trying to sell my accountancy services. I said, no, my second job is I go out and sing at weddings on the weekends. He's like, okay, we don't care about that, carry on.
I'm sure we had, it was Chris Derailed, I'm sure he was PwC as well, possibly. Yeah, I think so. He said he hated it as well.
I wouldn't say a bad word against them, because when I decided after that first year that basically I needed to make a choice between singing full time and that corporate job, because I did in that first year 100 weddings around the 9 to 5. Whoa. So if you think that most people get
in a year,
yeah, most people get 104 days for the weekends and then 30 days holiday, 134 days off in a year.
So you're singing covers, basically.
Yeah.
With you just turn up with your kind of, like, is it a backing track or something like that with all your sound kit?
Yeah, a couple of elements. I did a singing waiting, so in the middle of the meal, break out into song, fall over the bucket of cutlery, make a racket.
And what age were you doing that?
So started last year at uni when I was 21, and then did that essentially until COVID.
That shows me like a lot of confidence, because for you to do that at that age and to be able to stand up in front of crowds and do that, that's a lot of confidence. Takes a lot of bottle as well to kind of do that. So, but that was quite natural to you, was it, performing in front of?
Yeah, so I've been doing performance and singing since I was a kid, and it's what I really enjoyed doing. And PwC said, when I said I want to get out, I've been offered this job singing full time, and it's what I want to do. They said, would you like to take a sabbatical? You can resit your first block of exams and then join the year below you. Come back next September after a 6-7 month break after doing loads of weddings and enjoying yourself. And they gave me that option, which frankly I didn't deserve. So they were very good to me, but ultimately I didn't go back. I was loving my life singing.
How long did you do the singing for then at the weddings?
And then until COVID. So I had left PwC in, would have been autumn 2018. I had 1 full year then of being a full-time singer, and was planning from late 2020 to go cruise ships. I had a flat in Glasgow at the time that I'd kind of bought to live in while I was an accountant, and I was going to sell that, leave Glasgow. I already by this point had a small portfolio of property. I was kind of doing that as a side hustle, and I was going to give that up and go full-time singer. And then COVID, and it all came crashing down, and that's how we've ended up. Obviously, we'll now come onto the property. That's how I ended up doing what I do today, which is running a letting agency, because COVID stopped music in its tracks.
Right, no events.
Did you get the properties? How did you get the property portfolio? What gave you the desire to go for that?
So, and I'd asked for permission to be this honest, because I thought I should be. I got a major leg up, which was when I was 19, mum and dad said, we're going to buy you a flat. Rather than paying a landlord to look after you, we have the means to buy you a flat to live in. You will rent out the extra bedrooms, and that's your living allowance. You've got to live off that money, and don't come back to us looking for a handout later. That's you. We're going to set you up for life.
Which is probably what we're going to do with our kids, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
get the chance to do it.
Because I'm like that, when my kids go to uni, I'm like that, I'm not paying a landlord. Yeah. I'm not paying a landlord rent. I want that rent to come to me.
More prices.
Aye. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
they got the major leg up, and that's how kind of it all started in HMOs, etc. Because they bought a 4-bed flat in Garnet Hill in the middle of Glasgow.
Right.
I obviously lived in one of those rooms. Then it was my responsibility to let the others out, and we didn't realise until after buying it that an HMO license would be required to let the third extra bedroom. I could only live with 2 mates. For the first year, we'd need to apply for an HMO license. It would need fire doors. It would need this, that, and the other. But we're already down the rabbit hole.
Could you not just kid on you were in a relationship?
Well, that's what everybody else tries to do now. Absolutely. So I managed that, and my brother had had the same deal 5 years before me, and he was graduating 2 years after I'd started uni. So I'd done a year of getting an HMO license, etc. And he had a 3-bed flat in the West End that he'd been living in while he was a student. And he said, "Do you want to manage it for me?" And I'd put all my mates into my spare bedrooms. I had loads more mates that I was on courses with that needed a place to live. And he said, "You can look after that." And this was still before, this would be in 2015, 16, 17. So just before the letting agent kind of registration rules and stuff came in. So you didn't at that point need a license. So I charged my brother 10% because that's what everybody else did. And I let out the other rooms, and they were the first 2. It was my own flat and my brother's, which were completely lucky, just had a massive leg up in life, which not everyone will, or very few people will have the access to. But now I can look back on and be really, really grateful. And that's how I learned how to kind of cut my teeth in it initially.
Entry point into the HMO management, which we'll get onto. Just before you get to that, there's a wee bit I want to touch on. The ski seasons. Did you do a ski season?
Yeah, I did 3 in the end, but that's that little segue. That's what I left PwC for specifically. There's a chain of bars in the Alps called La Folie Douce. It's essentially clubbing outdoors on the side of a mountain at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
So anybody who's been in any skiing holidays will know exactly what this is. You see the clips on Instagram all the time as well. Honestly, mate, these places are mental. So how many of them are now out in the Alps?
I think they would have 6 or 7.
Round about all the kind of major big resorts and all resorts. They're all up dancing the tables and all that. Yeah. Snow's coming down, bottles of champagne just getting sprayed
across the audience.
And you were the guy that steps out onto the stage.
On stage in a pink cat suit with a headdress on. I said, like, mad costumes.
That must have been good fun.
It was. And I went there as a student.
As well.
Yeah, 6 days a week, performing 5 hours a day, really physical job. You've got to be outgoing. Like, if you want to show up to work and you've got a hangover and you're tired, it doesn't matter.
Tough shit.
Did you do much skiing? Or was it?
No. Literally, it was basically just singing and drinking for 3 winters. But I'd been there as a student, fell in love with it. I was like, that's my dream job.
Great experience, man. I did a few seasons as well. As a kind of I was just washing dishes in a hotel pretty much.
But in a resort?
So I started off in Courchevel.
Nice.
That was back before Courchevel. Courchevel now is like mega rich, like all the Russians and all that go to Courchevel.
Yeah.
But back then it was pre that, and that would have been like kind of 2000, 2001. But you know what it's like out there? It's quite kind of like, you get a lot of these kind of, chalet kind of tight workers that are, they've gone through private school and all that. The kind of mummy and daddy have paid for them to go out to do a ski season and all that. So you get a lot of that kind of crowd. So I found myself thrown in with these kind of posh folk in this hotel, and I was going through a bit of kind of mental time. I was a young guy, just wanted to go out and just party all the time. And as you do, but I was a bit of a weed smoker when I was younger, right? So I liked to smoke. So I used to, after the shift ended at 10:30 at night, I used to go up,
on the podcast with them, mate.
I used to go up to my room and just roll a spliff and all that, and have a wee smoke in the room. And they didn't like that at all because it didn't fit in. They didn't mind going out in the piss.
Yeah, with their culture.
But they didn't like the smoking the weed. So I get booted out of that job after about, I don't know, I think it lasted about 4 weeks, and then I had to get another job, and then I found my feet and all that. I had a great time, but it was that kind of there was that yuppie mentality out there, man. Did you find that at all? It was kind of...
Yeah, I mean, you meet a really wide range of people, and some of them, as you say, are there they're barely working. Like, they're not there to work and
other parents like own a chalet or something like that. You'll get a lot of that.
Yeah, but equally you get people from kind of working class backgrounds that you know, maybe got to go to Escape with their parents and loved it and were like, I want to learn to ski. And the best place to do it as a 19-year-old is to go out and do a gap year and do it there. So I met a wide range of people and loved it. It was very hard work, and I did that without mum and dad's blessing. They were like, I left PwC and the CA and the corporate route to go and do that, but I absolutely loved it. And if it wasn't for COVID, that is potentially what I'd be doing today. I'd still be singing full time. But it was an amazing opportunity. And I can look back now, really glad that I did it. I got the most out of it that I could have. And now I've just turned 30 and get a little bit older. I need to start looking ahead to the future. It was never going to be the rest of my life job. So I'm glad I got to do it, and now it's done.
So you started obviously managing your brother's flat, and then, you know, you obviously realised, like, you know, this is something that I could do. At what point did you think I could turn this into a business then? Yeah,
so the transition from there was, while I was a student, I decided to set up my little letting agency. I was like, this is a side hustle. I can manage my flats. And at this point, I was advertising the rooms on Facebook, or literally through word of mouth, mates at uni. I'm 20 years old, and I can let all the rooms through my social network. Literally didn't even need Gumtree, because I'm just going into uni.
Facebook.
Going to uni and going, do you know anyone who knows anyone who needs a room in August? And this was pre-PRT, so you could do fixed 12-month contracts still at this point. And so... Again, my brother talks to one of his mates. My dad still had some contacts from vet school. One of them wanted to buy a property, an investment property in Glasgow. One of his old mates' sons was coming to uni and wanted to buy a flat, but didn't know how to rent out the other bedrooms, essentially do what I had done, but a few years behind. And so by the time I was leaving PwC, I was probably managing maybe 7, all from friends and family network, if you like. So, you know, dad had mentioned to somebody else, my brother had mentioned to somebody else, a mate had mentioned to somebody else. And it was all just friends and family and all my own little network. And managing 7 properties, earning, you know, let's say whatever the management fees were, you know, 1,200-1,300 quid a month, which for me on top of a singer's salary was great. What a great little side hustle. I didn't see it becoming my full-time job, but it was great. While I was traveling, I was in ski resort in the winter singing, and somebody calls with the gas boiler's broken. I've only got 7 properties. I could do that from my mobile phone, and I did it. And then COVID all came crashing down. I had over 100 weddings booked in a 7-month span, April through September, October 2020, due to earn a full-time annual salary in 7 months working 3-4 days a week. The dream life. And I earned a zilch. And because I'd only left PwC 18 months prior, I didn't have 3 years of tax returns to prove I was self-employed, so qualified for 0 government help.
You didn't get any of the help, man.
Couldn't go back to mum and dad and say, I know you told me to stick out the CA, and I told you that I knew what I was doing, I'm going to be a singer. So I had a mortgage to pay on the flat that I was living in, and I was going to pay it. The student flats were all empty, so I still had my one rental at this point, the one that I'd lived in, I'd moved out of, was now letting it as a 4-bed HMO, and couldn't find any students to live in it, because all of the unis were shut.
They disappeared back home.
And it was a really rough 6 months of like, I've got too much pride to admit that I've completely botched this. I need to make it work. And that was the start of
Did you stay in Glasgow, or did you go back down?
So I did a month of sulking at my parents in Yorkshire. And then I realised that I was still needing to pay the bills in Glasgow, and didn't know what I was going to do. So I needed to come back to Glasgow. And the only thing I had at that point was these 7 flats.
And you're only 25 at this time, right?
Yeah, and I had these, 20, would have been 25, just turned 30. Thanks for doing the maths on me. I had too much pride to say that it had all gone wrong. So I had these 7 flats, and I just threw myself at it. So it was May 2020, turning June.
So did those flats that you had, did they effectively become empty, and you were like, did that give you the kind of, like, kick up the arse to say, right, I need to get these filled again? Yeah. Like, let's go and do this properly this time?
100%. That was the only income. Like, my management fee on those flats, which was directly tied to them being let and earning rent, was my only income, because I'd lost my job overnight.
So what was your first big kind of business expense then, when you decide to go decide to go down this route and officially become a letting agent then? Can you remember?
So as far as expenses go, very little, and we still run really lean today. So just to jump ahead a little bit, we manage just over 100 properties now. We manage about 120 as of today.
But that's HMOs predominantly?
So about 40 of those would be HMOs.
All right, okay.
Yeah, so it's, by revenue, it would be more than half of the business because they are bigger earners. We're talking much bigger numbers. But yeah, at the time, it was all HMOs. So all 7 of those would have been HMOs. And I needed to make the numbers work. So it was Facebook groups. It was, do you know anyone who's looking for a letting agent? I'd already passed the exams and stuff at this point just to have the option and just kind of set up a LetUs brand, but with the intention of perhaps never exploring it, never pushing it. I found one landlord, he had 9 HMOs and all were empty by July of 2020.
Can you remember how you got that first proper landlord?
Was Facebook. It was maybe the Scottish Landlords Network group, and he posted saying, I'm looking for an admin assistant to help me manage my HMOs. And I went in there and said, you don't need an admin assistant, you need me.
A nice one.
I've got this letting agency, we only do HMOs, we're a specialty in that. And I bagged my way in and simultaneously just undercut everybody.
You need to do what you need to do at the start, don't you? So.
Yeah, he paid 5% management fees.
He's still on that now to this day.
So I ended up having I told him I needed to put his fees up a few years later as the business started to expand. And he said, unfortunately, if you put the fees up, I'll do what I wanted to do originally and just hire an admin assistant. And that's what he did. So I had to shake hands and say, thank you so much for the leg up, because you took me from 7 to 16 overnight. And those 16 really helped catapult us. So we've since parted ways.
See, when you took those ones on, were they already were they already let out? Were they full or were they?
No, as I say, because it was COVID, all the students had left. This is now, we're into PRT years, so they can give 30 days notice whenever they want. And all the unis had come out and said, we might not be reopening in September. So all the students just gave notice. And they ended up opening some classes, but not all. And so it was really hard graft that September to get those rooms filled. Right. Rents were definitely down on those student rooms. And we spent a lot of money on advertising, but managed to get them filled. And as I say, that was the first proof in the pudding.
They like West End of Glasgow?
City centre, West End and a couple in the south side. But yeah, we're talking all the centre of Glasgow.
All licensed HMOs?
Yeah, at that point.
So fancy making £1,000 for sending a WhatsApp? Let's take a wee break to talk about referring sellers to John and Lewis at Prime Property Auctions. Me and Stephen have both done it and it couldn't be easier. If you know someone selling a property, the guys will pay you £1,000 or 1% of the sale price, whatever's higher, just for passing their details. Doesn't matter if the seller is already with an estate agent or not, just drop the guys a message and they'll do everything from the first call to getting the property sold. Know someone who might be looking to sell or struggling to get a result with their agent? Go to the link in the show notes and send them a message now. I think we get on to the nuts and bolts of HMO investing now, and obviously you're going to help us with that and understand it. So a lot of people, I think a lot of people new to property, they see a lot of content online around HMO, but predominantly that is focused on English HMOs, where people are buying up these kind of terraced houses and they're putting up stud partition walls and making them from 3-bedroom terrace houses into 7-bedroom houses and renting out room by room to young professionals and all that. But that kind of model doesn't really happen in Scotland, does it? Or does it? What do you see up here in the HMO market?
No, and I'll be interested because I know Stephen's got HMOs as well, so I'm really interested to know how because you're not in Glasgow, are you?
Aberdeen.
Aberdeen, yeah. So we're interested to see how the Aberdeen market compares to Glasgow.
What's a typical HMO look like to you then in kind of the major cities of Scotland?
So the major difference is that the HMO model in England is typically room by room lets. They're still on fixed term contracts down there. So if the tenants squabble and they fall out, it doesn't matter to the landlord because you've got a piece of paper that says you've got to pay me rent for the next 8 months whether you like it or not. Doesn't work in Scotland because if you put people into individual rooms and they move in, they don't like their flatmates, they can just give you notice and leave 30 days later. The whole model doesn't work in the same way. So our HMOs are all group lets. We've got flats ranging from 3-bed to 6-bed at the moment, and they would all be groups of mates. So you're looking at
second year students where they've met in halls or something like that.
That is, and this is the time of year. So we're recording this at the end of May, and this is all of the halls contracts are ending. All of those students are now looking for their home for the next 3 years, to take them through the rest of their degree. And that is the vast majority of the inquiries that we're getting for our HMOs right now, is those students coming out of halls.
How does that compare to what you operate then?
Yeah, exactly the same, yeah.
You took a building and you've made it into
7 HMO flats, yeah. So you've got them on the one PRT where they'll share I actually really like it because obviously they share the PRT if there's 4 students, 4 in the flat, but because they're all under that affordability of paying the actual £2,000 the rent, whatever it may be, they all require a guarantor. So each PRT is a pain in the arse, I suppose, for the guys, but there's 8 people on each lease effectively.
Yeah.
Do you ever get that through, obviously, your course and education stuff, that people come on and they want to do HMO investing, and you're like,
it's not that popular.
No,
like people don't have the desire, but I think it's because the entry point in Scotland just seems so high. Like you're having to, I mean, I'm assuming the properties you're talking about, West End and centre of Glasgow, are like a few $100,000 worth.
Yeah, pretty good. Your entry point is now probably 240k property value.
And that would maybe get you like a 4 or 5 beds flat in a good
240. We're talking 3 beds.
What's the crucial fundamentals to that type of investing then? Because it has to really appeal to the student market, so it needs to be location specific, right? It's got to be in the areas where you're going to get that catchment area
to students.
Yeah, location. It's been Taylor's oldest time in property generally, but in HMOs even as much so, if not more, because students don't want to live miles away from their uni.
and then the issue with that is if you're having to spend 250 grand on a flat, and then with interest rates like they are 6.5% or whatever, then is that actually still making sense? You know, with your investor landlords, you know, are they still buying? Are they still buying these types of properties? Are they still working at the higher interest rates?
And therein is why rents are mad now, and why student rent in particular, or HMO rent, has gone up in my experience 50% in like 7 years or something.
What would you pay for like say a 4-bed or a 5-bed? Now, how's it work in West End of Glasgow, kind of prime location for Glasgow Uni?
Our top end now will be about 800 per room per month,
right.
No bills included. That's obviously the top end. The average will be about 700. But by the time you've added on your broadband and your utilities, you know, these students having to pay a lot of money to live.
And how much would that property roughly be?
So yeah, you might have let's say a 300 grand flat, earning 3 grand a month before your expenses. So that's a 12% gross return. Yeah, by the time you've taken your 6.5% interest on a nearly £250,000 loan at 75% interest, 7% leverage. Sorry. You've got a whack of interest to come off, and the running costs on HMOs are higher than you would need to budget for a bread and butter 2-bed unfurnished somewhere. But we aim for, if we're going to source a property for one of our clients, we're aiming for a minimum 7% net after they've factored in all of their costs.
I guess the plus point is that these assets are in really good locations where you're getting capital growth as well, right?
Exactly, that's 7% not including the capital growth.
Because you brought in your brochure there with you've done full refurbs and all that, and these properties. So what is that? What are you actually going in and doing then? First of all, you're sourcing the property for your client. Mm-hmm. In terms of the renovation, what's the process to get it up to HMO spec then? Just to kind of give us a brief overview, what are the main things that you need to do?
Yeah, so the 2 big ones would be fire doors throughout and a fire alarm system. They'd be kind of your 2 biggest structural expenses.
You know all about that, don't you?
Yeah.
Did you not have a story about the fire system or something like that, where you had to...
I tested I'm sure it was 86 heads throughout the whole of the building. And I tested them at the start, and I was like, the fire alarm system's working great. Not factoring in the renovation costs, and obviously 2 or 3 months of renovating, the dust everywhere. Tested it right at the very end when the HMO officer's coming out to test, and he's like, there's 74 heads that are fucked. I was like, joking. No. So I thought, this must be dust and shit and stew. So I borrowed my mate's compressor, took them all off and blew them all out and got dust coming out of them and put them all back in. Like 54 came up. I was like, oh no. And I think there was a student, there was a house association that had converted it before, and they'd put some, I can't remember the name. It was a C2 system. It was like all singing, all dancing. It tested for heat, smoke, fucking, what was the other one as well?
Carbon monoxide.
Carbon monoxide. It was like 3 or 4 in one. It was like, each head's 300 quid.
Oh my god.
This was, and if I
So what was the total cost? Do you remember?
I remember it being, it was like this total tie-in with, I had to get off the loan from the 1st of June. The students were moving in the 1st of June. My HMO license had to be approved to get that in, to get off the bridge, to get onto the long term. It was like everything just stood on, if I don't get this license, I don't get this 13 grand income in it, I don't get off the bridge. I was like, oh fuck. So the guy says to me, he says, you can use existing wiring, we'll replace the board and all the heads for just a basic system for smoke or heat and heat. But it was still like 10 grand, and I had to drive straight down to Glasgow and go and get the only person that could supply the equipment there and then was somewhere in Glasgow. I was like, fuck.
We're down to
Straight
Glasgow
down.
just to pick up the
Just
detector heads, then turn around again.
8 heads, board, back up. Right, can you fit in the next couple of days? Yep.
And then you've got things like, what is it, like certain number of sockets per room.
Yeah.
Certain amount of worktop space for the kitchen, is it?
Yeah, so we'd look at a lot of that in the sourcing side of things. You're already walking in and going, that kitchen's going to be too small. So we need to budget 1,500 quid just to completely change the layout of the kitchen and just change all the worktops, keep all the cabinets. But just to hit this arbitrary metric that the council set on the amount of worktop space, we're going to need to make changes.
Was it 1 cubic metre per for 3 people on it?
That'd be your cabinets, yeah,
Right,
and there'll be minimum 2 metres of usable worktops. You can't include your sinks, can't include your hob. 2 metres for 3 people, and then add 60 centimetres. So for a 5-bed flat, you need 3.2 metres. Just a lot of worktop, not including your oven.
Kitchen.
And
What that shocked me was the bedroom size. Like for the HMO bedroom size, it was like minimum 6 square metres. Like
6.5. Yeah, 6.5. Yeah, you can touch all the walls with one wingspan.
Right. And what about the process with the council then to get the licensing? How? Obviously, it will depend which local authority you're in. You've got experience with Aberdeen. You're obviously predominantly Glasgow. How are you finding things, or how have you found things in the application process?
The council department are really good. They're really helpful, and they will try and get you the license. You know, the HMO department at the council are there to try and increase the number of homes available for these kind of students and young professionals to use. But it does take a long time. So it takes a year, and you need to budget for every day of that year, getting little to no return. You can go maximum, let's say 2 bedrooms occupied. Right. If you've bought a 5-bed flat, you're going to put 2 people in it and earn 1,400 quid a month, but you've got 3 bedrooms, another 2,100 quid a month sat empty for the whole first year, and there's nothing you can do about it.
This is for a brand new application then to a property that hasn't had one before.
Correct, yeah.
What if it was one that had existed? Would that be a lot quicker then?
It would. If you buy one with an existing licence, you've got 30 days to apply for a renewal, and if you apply within those 30 days, you're allowed to continue using it as an HMO from day one. So it's a massive difference in value for an investor looking to buy an HMO. They can get that full, for all 5 bedrooms filled return from day one, as long as they apply for their own licence within those first 30 days.
What's it cost? Sorry?
Why a year for a new application, and what's the process that takes a year?
Because that's what's written in the legislation, and it's literally written into the legislation that if they've not given you a response within a year, then it's automatically granted. Right. And they did come.
I'm assuming they're quicker than that.
They came to me at the start of 2024, and this I'd done, let's say, 8 or 9 years at this point since my first ever application, and they said this is the year we're going to get everything done in 6 months. Like, we're going to really try and turn things around. It's not happened. As Fred, whoever's fault that is, we don't know, but it still takes a whole year.
Not enough resources in the department.
Yeah. Who knows?
But they're good to deal with the HMO.
Yeah, so say that, you know, if you were a new landlord looking to get into HMOs for the first time, and you don't want to, let's say, pay a company like mine to come in and do all the legwork for you, you want to try and do it yourself, give them a call. Certainly my experience with the Glasgow HMO department anyway, is that if you gave them a call and said, I want to do things the right way, I want to have my fire alarms, I want to have my fire doors, I want to do this compliant and comply by all your rules, but I don't know what they are, can you help me? They do give you that help. Yeah.
I picked up a story lately there in my news articles, you know how I do my alerts for the property, for the market update. And one news article popped in, and it was the HMO that got refused the licence because there was people having very loud sex. It was in Strathbungo. That was the reason, they said. And Nicola Sturgeon actually became involved because it was her constituency area. So she got involved with the campaign to basically get it rejected. But that was the reason they gave.
But the landlord, that's such a shame, because what do you even do about that?
How can you control that? Do you know what I mean?
I was using the 1 bed on the ground floor of the HMO block, because it was an old caretaker's office, and it was 32 square metres. I converted to a 1 bed flat, and I'll use it when I'm in Aberdeen. Just kept it empty. And the first year we rented it was right out of COVID. So quiet, students, I don't know, I thought they would just go wild. It was nice and quiet. The last year, they were a fucking nightmare. Yeah. Like, they would come in at all hours in the morning, banging the door, and then that's what was happening right behind me is there's students having sex in the corridor right behind my bedroom in this 1 bed flat. I'm like, fuck this, I had to rent out. I was like, I'm not staying.
Well, let's talk about that then. Challenges, obviously, because we are dealing with students here, and students get a bad rep, right? But we know they're not all like that. But what are the challenges in dealing with, you know, students as tenants?
Yeah. If I may, I was going to start with one positive, just because it touched on what Stephen mentioned about having 8 people on 1 PRT. The major asset to doing HMOs is when you've got 4 students and 4 guarantors and 1 PRT, they're all liable for the whole amount of rent.
Yeah, your rent's guaranteed.
Yeah. So I've touched wood. Yeah. I'm now grabbing the wood in the middle of this podcast table.
It's a big chunk of wood.
Don't want to tempt fate here. But we've never had any late payments. Like students just pay on time because it's either mum and dad's money or it's SAS, it's government money. They always pay. And they pay on time. So we're going to now, and I'll come on to all the negatives, but you do get your money, which is fundamentally the most important thing, particularly in the landscape we're in now, where eviction and trying to get your rent later is
especially
hard.
Because, like you say, the way the lease is set up, they're all jointly and severally liable.
Yeah. So if Johnny doesn't pay, I don't go to Johnny and say I want your rent. I go to Lisa, Sally and Marcus and I say...
And then Lisa, Sally and Marcus are guaranteeing that they're going back to Johnny's parents.
If Johnny doesn't pay his rent, I'm looking at the three of you to make up for it. And suddenly they're on at Johnny's bedroom door knocking. I don't have to do the hard work. They do it for me. So that's kind of main plus. The negatives, as either a landlord if you're self-managing or if you're a letting agent for an HMO, you need to be available 24/7. It's written in the rules of the licence that you need to have a 24-hour number for emergencies.
They're quite high maintenance, these young folk, can't they?
And they don't always call with emergencies, let me tell you. I've had plenty of calls.
What are some ridiculous things? I mean, is it just usual like light bulbs and stuff like that? And
the most ridiculous one, it was several years ago. We're talking about 3 or 4 years ago now, but somebody called me up at 10 o'clock on Friday night to say, do you mind if I have a hamster in my room? And I was like, this is not that's not an emergency.
Just for the weekend.
I want to get a hamster, and I've seen this deal on eBay, and I need to know right now if I can buy a bloody hamster.
Boy setting stone to his head.
Mind you, they can do something to damage these wee things.
So I gave her a short. I said if you email me on Monday, we'll have a discussion. But now is not the time.
I just obviously we just deal with normal lets. Predominantly we have a few HMOs that we manage, but predominantly I would just always find a huge difference between, like, say, for example, foreign students and young students compared to, like, obviously your working class families and all that, who you never really hear from about maintenance or minor things. And then, the students are like reporting every little tiny wee thing. They can't do anything, man. They're just, at the end of the day, they're just kids as well, you got to remember. And you're trying to sort of guide them through the process to try to top up pressure in a boiler and all that, and they're just like...
So Angus feels like the father figure as well.
I do. I don't feel old enough to be their dad, but I do have to treat them like my children sometimes.
They get anxiety about anything.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Vacuum cleaners is the biggest one. As soon as we'll probably get in an average year 20 reports of there's something wrong with my vacuum cleaner, and I can fix at least 5 of those by saying, have you emptied it? And they'll come back with, what do you mean? And they just think that the dirt vanishes. It's never occurred to them that there's a bag inside that collects all the dirt.
As well, they've never had to live by themselves and do stuff for themselves as well. So I'd imagine mess, we get it in a few of ours. Messy bastards, aren't they?
Can be, yeah.
Dishes piled up, never the cleaning's a major thing, man. I mean, cleaning can be sorted at the end of a tenancy, but it's just when you go in, you see the toilet and stuff like that, and the girls with the sanitary towels and stuff like that just left outside the toilet, and you're like, oh my god.
It's you in HMOs that I always find funny, like, because you'll speak to landlords looking to sell an HMO, you're like, this student's in it, go in it back in 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're going round these doors, chat the doors, and they don't answer, and then next minute you open the door and they're just lying in their bed sleeping, and you're like, fucking
they don't give a shit as well. You go in for the inspections and they just lie there like that. Others, usually they've got they've been out the night before or something like that, and they've got a bird back or something.
I've had that on multiple occasions. Walked in to do an inspection and there's 2 people coming out the room. I'm looking at the lease going, there's 4 lads in here, and I've seen at least 2 girls in this flat at 11 o'clock in the morning. And
so obviously there's that kind of high turnaround, isn't there, as well? So does that mean that you would be advising people, if they're doing those kind of lets, you having to account for more void periods, maintenance? Is it higher?
Absolutely. Our kind of standard budget now would be about £1,000 a year for just routine maintenance, wear and tear. Which is a lot more than your 2-bed unfurnished flat. I'm sure there's landlords out there who've got £500 a month, 1-2 beds in some of the poor areas, going £1,000 a year on maintenance. I can't afford that. And that's before you've factored in your factors fees for Glasgow tenements and your insurance, etc. That's all on top. So you need to budget for that maintenance. And we would always forecast for 11 months occupied. So you're allowing a month a year where you can't get that.
How does that work then? Because I was going to ask, obviously, because remember we had, back when the PRT came in, it was all hell broke loose about Edinburgh, especially because they were all raging, because what they used to do is they used to rent it out for whatever it was, 9 months or whatever, the student year, and then they used to do the short lets for just rent out for the festival. But I mean, it's kind of worked out all right, hasn't it? It's not too bad. What are you finding? Because obviously with the PRT, tenants can hand in notice at any point they want with 28 days notice. So obviously the uni year starts September, isn't it? When are you finding that people are taking on properties or start looking, and how long are they keeping them for?
Yeah, and I'd be interested to know what Stephen's thoughts on this are as well. Mine certainly was, because I'd kind of started and was managing my little handful of flats as the transition from SAT to PRT happened in 2017. And we managed to get all of the SATs out for the 1st of August 2017. And I think the rules changed in September, October time. So we were fixed until then, July 31st, 2018. And we could re-let everything. Then everything was coming available. Those last year of fixed term contracts were ending July 31st, 2018. And it was really easy to re-let from August 2018. So the training wheels weren't really off until 2019, which was right before COVID. So we definitely all thought with the change to the PRT, there's going to be empty flats all summer. How are we going to cope? There's going to, we can't run this business model off 9 months, September through May, occupied and 3 months empty. All that's happened is when I first started, the leases ran 1st of August to 31st of July. You'd have cleaners in that night, next one's in the next day. That's just moved to the 31st of May, 1st of June. So we've got, I think, six or seven HMOs all changing hands 31st of May to the 1st of June. So all the tenants have given notice for the same date on the 31st of May. And we'll just turn around that night.
Moved in 3 months earlier.
And all the new students know, all the ones coming out of halls know, that if they don't find the good one and they pay for it from June, it won't be available in August.
Right, so what I'm saying is the properties might be empty, or there might only be one living there over the summer, because most of them disappear back home for the summer.
Yeah.
Even though the property is lying empty, they're still paying for it because they want to secure a good property with their pals, basically.
Yeah. All the ones in 2019 or let's say 2021 after the COVID year learned the hard way that our phones were quiet in June, but we managed to get most of the stuff let. And then the phone rings off the hook in August with people going, I'm so desperate, I need a place to live. And we've got nothing left.
And again, that's because, I would imagine there is a shortage of good quality standard HMOs. So if, they're on it early to get that. So it is still a thing, right? People still want the shared flat. Is it still a thing amongst the students?
100%. Yeah, they're building block after block. I don't know about Aberdeen, but they're building block after block in Glasgow right now. Hundreds of new student rooms
a year. Do you think that'll affect that demand, that you won't be able to get them in the 1st of June? You might have to wait until September, August and get the dregs because these new ones will pop up. Do you think people are going to still want these West End locations, City Centre locations that they can't build on?
That's what they want, isn't it?
I think you don't want to live in a block of 400 students. You want to live in your flat with your 3 best mates. And have your space. Yeah.
I think it seems to be different for see the foreign student market and the Chinese.
Yeah.
So what they seem to kind of that's kind of suits them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Purpose built. We're talking about purpose built student accommodation. Like you say,
like your own little suite and stuff. Yeah.
Like you say, that's mass scale development at the moment in Glasgow.
Yeah.
I think I read there was 17 planning permission, 17 applications for planning permission for big blocks of purpose-built student accommodation.
I can believe it.
But I just think there'll always be a market for that kind of just you want to share with your pals. Yeah. Because I never had it. I didn't go to uni, but I can imagine it must be a right good time, having that flat for the year.
Party flat. Yeah. When it comes to facilities in your HMOs, particularly in Glasgow, is it, a 4-bed flat, is that generally an ensuite each, or is that 2 bathrooms between 4, or is it 1 bathroom between 4?
It does vary by the flat, but it's definitely not as I say, the English model would be you have an ensuite with every room and none of those tenants know one another. In Scotland, you are living with your mates. So we've got some 4-bed, 1-bath flats. 4-bed, 2-bath would probably be about the average, 5-bed, 2-bath.
Is that a sweet point, do you think?
Yeah. Just because that's what the flat would have been like for a family. And you're actually not making that major a change from being a family home, a family flat, to a student flat. All you're doing is changing the doors and the alarm systems, and then putting them in the same layout that's always been.
Sorry, just one last question on that setup for it. Is there one point where it becomes too many rooms that's a pain in the arse to let? Like, I don't know if 6 bed, 7 bed, 8 bed.
You get 8 beds on the West End, don't you?
Yeah, you do. 5 is the sweet spot, because as soon as you go from 5 to 6, you need to double everything. So you need 2 ovens now, you need 2 fridge freezers, you need the extra bathroom. You're not allowed to just have one anymore. You need the room space requirements change. From 5 to 6, all the rules increase. And they are harder to let. Invariably, there are fewer groups of 6, 7, 8 mates that want to live together. 4 beds, I could let all of them 4 times over, which is why they're the peak £800 a room now is for our 4-bed flats. As soon as you start to go bigger, the rent comes down and the demand comes down. That means the voids go up.
So it's not necessarily what people would see as an investor thinking, oh, that's the 4-bed, but I might go and go for a 6, 7, 8-bed because I'm going to get more income. Generally, you wouldn't get more income.
The thing about it, like, say, is like 7 or 8 people sharing as well. Like, the chances are there's a very high, risk of people falling out.
Yeah.
And then obviously one leaves, and then what happens? They need to find somebody else, or it's just messy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But again, that's why the PRT system helps, because at the moment, the responsibility will be on them to find their own replacement.
Yeah.
So you do have a little bit of protection there when you've
just
got
amended lease each time then when somebody moves out.
Exactly, yeah. One tenant has fallen out with the other 4 in their 5-bedroom flat. The rules, they might change in the next couple of years. We'll have to wait and see what the Scottish Government do. But at the moment, the onus would be on that one tenant to find their own replacement or keep paying for the room, because they're on a joint and several lease and they can't terminate on behalf of the 4 others. So you've got a little bit more protection there as well.
I've got an investor, I actually had a phone call with you about this one already, and he's looking at buying portfolio, talked about the West Ends, and there's a couple that are already run as individual rooms, let out on an individual room basis. But do you think it can work for professionals, in Glasgow? I just see it as like, see, if you're a professional, right, and you're earning a half decent income, do you really want to be sharing a flat with 8 people? Do you know what I mean?
No, you don't. I think the minimum wage went up a lot just in the last budget there. And so housing is hopefully going to become more affordable, but there was a time not so long ago that didn't have a choice. So those business models worked because young people simply couldn't afford it. And there wasn't enough properties to find that 1 2-bedroom.
I can see how that would work in London still as well, with the prices down there and stuff.
Yeah, but again, they've got fixed term contracts. So once you're in, it doesn't matter. But up here, I only know of one operator that does room by room lets on a proper letting agency size scale, and the rest of us are all doing.
It's much better, aren't you? Just teaming up with a pal or something like that, or a flatmate, and just getting like a 2-bed or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Must be a headache doing room by room. Like, imagine sharing a kitchen and
complaining
on my milk. He's stole my milk, and you're that. That must
we
be
don't do it for that reason. We just don't.
Yeah.
We just don't take those flats on. You've got room by room let. I'm sorry, I can let it for you as a group if you want to make the change. But
somebody's left a shite in the bathroom, no flush the toilet.
Who the phone?
You be getting the email.
We still get that sometimes with the group lets. Yeah. Not nearly as often.
Come on, guys, sort it out between yourselves. Come on here.
Yeah, but it's just part of the fun of HMOs. Unfortunately, you've just got to take the rough with the smooth.
Yeah. Good model. That sounds like a good city as well. Sounds like a huge demand for it in Glasgow.
Yeah, so
I think you've got the main city. Obviously, you've got the student towns. Aberdeen, Dundee, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Stirling. Obviously, we've got some in Stirling.
I heard Stirling. I know St Andrews doesn't offer any HMO licences. Like, so you've got St Andrews and Stirling. I believe are still saying no more. HMO, but obviously Glasgow, Aberdeen.
That's a point. Yeah. So are you seeing any other ones getting knocked back or refused? Like, is there any certain locations that people could avoid? Maybe Glasgow. Yeah,
it's a really good point to make. Hillhead specifically, so it's right in the heart of Glasgow West End, kind of one of the highest priced, the most prestigious areas. They will still give you the license, but you've really got to fight tooth and nail to get it, because the local councillors, community groups, etc., will oppose on principle every single application.
Oversaturated there.
Well, that's what they're at. Your local community group will argue, we want families here, we don't want more students, we've got enough.
You can understand as well, like, say if you're living in a 300 grand flat up in the West End, and then you've got a student, like you say, a party pad, you'd be raging, wouldn't you? But like, I mean, how do you manage relationships with neighbours? Do you get a hard time sometimes with the neighbours?
Yeah, we do, and you've really got to pick between. You've got to try and figure out whether the neighbour is being unreasonable or whether the tenants are being a nuisance. And it's not always easy based on the limited information. You've got 2 sides to every story. So we've got a few neighbours that call up regularly. And I know the tenants, and we go to the inspections, and the flat's always immaculate. And I err on the side of the tenants, and I go, this is probably just a nosy, irritable neighbour that wants an excuse to complain. And then other times you walk into the flat and you go, this place is a state. I know they're causing grief to their neighbours.
I mean, let's balance it up a wee bit, because we have painted a bit of a bad light on young student tenants and that. But I'm sure you have plenty of cases where they do look after the property and they're decent.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why it's become the biggest part of our business, and it's still our focal point. Yes, we now take on any residential property, trying to grow the letting agency, and so we're not turning back clients that want to let out their 2 or 3 bed family flat or unfurnished. But we still focus on HMOs because we have a great experience with them. We know how to manage them effectively, and we only, and this is maybe just a trick for any landlords out there who do their own viewings and let the properties themselves, our policy has always been we won't let a property without an in-person viewing. And when we've got 3 or 4 groups coming through a property to do a viewing, we'll make notes. Did they show up on time? Were they polite? Did they use their please and thank yous? Did they have any intelligent questions? Because all of that speaks to, are they going to keep the place nice after they've moved in, or are they going to cause you loads and loads of grief?
We had a random one last week. It's a tenant wanting the 4-bed HMO flat for her and her cat. She's moving from Canada. And she's got to uni. It's like, what the fuck? And she
Why?
It was weird. Like, she was willing to pay the money for it, the location, and
she got an OnlyFans account.
That's why she's going to start a broth or something.
Red flags.
There's like 2 of the rooms. One room,
6 months up front. I'm like,
one room's for her, 1 room's for the cat, and 2 rooms are for shooting videos.
Oh God, no! I was like, nah, there's something dodgy there. Like that.
I really want you guys to get a politician on to the podcast, and just that as a prime example. She's willing to pay 6 months rent up front. She's got money on a platter, and if it was possible to evict her if she then stopped paying rent, you would take it. But there's a situation we're now in where it takes a year or more to evict people, and you can't always get your money back. We're now driving ourselves into the situation where you can only take the people who can demonstrate they've got loads of cash in the bank and they've got assets that they could sell. And, so we're basically now pigeonholing into the wealthiest people, or the people with the most means are getting all the nice properties, and everybody else is screwed.
Yeah,
and
they're getting disadvantaged because of the system.
Yeah. Whereas if you had a system...
Again, it's another thing that's backfiring. They set 100%. Out unintended consequences. Same with the rent controls, rent caps. They set out to try and protect the tenants. Ultimately, it backfires. They end up paying more because of fear in the market. People are we need to put our rents up because what are they going to do next? We had a situation yesterday. The guys in 5.5, it was a couple actually, split up during the tenancy. And then they both handed in their notice, right? So we thought, happy days, we'll get the property back, vacant possession, 28 days notice. Went in yesterday, the guy's still living. I actually opened the door, walked in, presuming that it would be empty. The guy appears from up the stairs. He's still living there. He's like, no, I need some time. We just know it's just gonna go and go and go. And nothing we can do, mate. Nothing we can. Even though they ended the tenancy by giving their notice, he can stay there until we go through the tribunal process.
I'm starting to like these conversations about lets and the stuff now. Like, what's happened to me? you got a tenant dying at the property 2-3 weeks ago.
Oh shit!
And
dying in the property.
In the property.
What happened?
Sat there for a few months. I know we're going off topic.
He sat there, or she?
He sat there, but he must have had a standard order set up for the rent. The rent didn't come in, but he's paid his rent on time for 4.5 years. And when we took the management over from the letting agent, the old letting agent says he's happy as Larry there. He will be carried out in a box. That was his exact words.
Literally.
Did.
That's sad.
2 months, obviously. I think first month we tried to check him. Didn't no response, no contact. Approaching the second month, bound in it, and we said, look, we'll do a welfare check. Went in and the girl was trying to put the key in the door and turn it, and she phoned me, says, I think the key's in the back of the door, that's turning, and it's like, he's dead. They phoned the police. So it was quite, Sam dealt with it brilliantly actually. The police blue lighted it there, got access to the property, found the guy in the bathroom, been there dead for fucking months, I think.
That's sad, man. Any idea what the cause of death?
Yeah, natural cause of death, but it took a few weeks to go through that process. It was 71. But it was just a shame that you've got a tenant that's in that place that none of his family,
nobody picked up.
No one to check in
for a month until we discovered that his rent's bouncing. Something up. He's a good tenant. So it was a real shame. But I didn't understand the process that the Crown inherits the tenancy. You have to get the next of kin to end the tenancy with the tenant. I was like, holy shit, this is quite interesting. And it was the whole process of finding the next of kin, allowing them to end the tenancy. And even if they didn't have a next of kin and it went to the Crown has to then go, like, there's a process to go through before they can end the tenancy. And I was like,
every day's a learning day, isn't it? In lettings, man.
Yeah, it was quite
honestly, I'm on that Scottish Association of Landlords like every week.
Every day.
I'm like, advice. Because like the team are coming to me, they're going like, how do I deal with this situation? I'm like, I don't know. I've never dealt with that before.
Yeah.
Let's learn all about it.
It's interesting though, isn't it?
There's so much to tenancy and it's changing all the time. Talking about that housing bill coming in, what are we thinking for? Is that going to have any impact on HMOs? We're talking about, I mean, obviously we'll leave rent controls aside, but I'm thinking things like pets and properties, redecoration, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, the biggest one that affects HMOs is that they're looking at allowing forced ending of PRTs, of joint and
So
several
if one
tenancies.
tenant hands a notice,
They
then
can
it ends the whole...
I think, and there was in the last consultation they did last year, they were looking at what do you think should be the time period. Like at the moment it's 1 month notice. They're proposing one tenant would be allowed to give 3 months notice and force their 4 flatmates to find somewhere else to live. So if that comes through, it'll be certainly the biggest change since 2017 in our business model.
I'm just trying to think how that would... Well, I mean, in a way, it's,
Aren't we all?
it's good. It's good for the tenants, right? Because sometimes they do get trapped into something where you think, like, something might happen, right, where they just need to go, and then they're trapped in that tenancy. So I think it does need to change.
It's easy to... I don't know. Yeah, there's two sides to every story, isn't there? That person could find someone to replace them in the tenancy and do the amendment to it. It's on them, surely, if they've had the fault. But I get if the circumstances they've not caused or
we had a situation where it was like domestic violence, right? So the women had to leave and the guy stayed in the property, and that woman was forced out, but she's still liable for the rent even though she can't live there, and she can't just end the tenancy by herself. It needs to be both.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So you put yourself in that situation.
No, absolutely.
And I think that's the motivation for the change.
Yeah.
So, but it's very similar to the whole SAT to PRT switch in 2017. They did that change and it works massively for tenants in the majority of situations, but doesn't really apply to the student market.
But you can't
and it's
change
the same for this.
the rules to suit one situation. These are I know there's something in it, but the government make us changes through the housing bill like that for that situation. It'll fuck up. They'll have a huge knock-on effect on the sector.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's exactly what we've seen with the PRT into students, and this change again will hopefully help the majority. Certainly in domestic violence situations, it will be a big help. But
in that situation where you've got 4 friends just sharing, and one guy or one girl says, "I'm just leaving," that's it. The whole tenancy ends. Then you need to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, you've upset the other 3 people in that situation.
And then it's a case of, right, it's quite uncertain. It's uncertain times for them, because then they need to rely on the landlord or yourselves renewing the lease, and then you're going to be like, right, okay, so you just taking it on the 3 years now for a 4-bedroom flat, or where are you getting the other person from? How long do you give them till it becomes a point where this ain't going to happen? They're not going to be able to afford this now.
Yeah.
I think if there's extenuating circumstances where it be violence or something illegal, or that there's a threat to their safety or something that they can find a way out of the...
In exceptional circumstances.
Yeah, there must be a
so just tweak it for that, for those certain situations.
Yeah, there must be something they can do, surely.
Yeah. Which, the tribunal loves to appeal to them for literally everything now, so surely that can just be another...
Everything's discretionary, and everyone's taken over a year now. So, right, I think it's been great. Is there anything else you want to touch on that we've missed?
I think the only thing I'd mention is the cost of HMOs. If you want to get into the HMO business, I'll just split the numbers out for you in 60 seconds.
Go for it.
You'd be about 10k to get your license. So that's your £2,500 application to Glasgow City Council, putting your fire doors and your alarm systems and getting all your compliance in a standard 3-4 bed flat. 10k in the door. You've then got a budget to furnish it, assuming it's not furnished already. It might be another £1,500 a room, and then budget for that first 12 months. Only fill 2 bedrooms for the first year, and then you can get up to your full whack, budgeting that £750, £800 a room, whatever the case may be. But really crunch your numbers, because if you get them wrong, it can be a very expensive process, and I've seen it before. So do your homework in advance.
And bills, that's brilliant. Great summary. Bills, you usually leave that to them.
Yeah, bills are not included.
Don't include the bills, and the council tax, their responsibility as well.
Yeah,
people think students don't pay.
You don't want to get hit with that. And
that's fantastic.
One thing I was thinking about furniture is that I hate furnishing flats. I just hate it. I try and do everything unfurnished, because it's just the wear and tear. Stuff gets scabby, then it's like, it's just a pain. But obviously you need to, right?
Yeah.
With the HMO. Is there any advice on furniture? Do you pay a little bit extra to get a bit better quality stuff, would you advise? Or
I swear by IKEA, and the reason I swear by IKEA is because it's modular and individual pieces are replaceable. So if you take an IKEA bed, for example, if the most common bit of the bed to break would be the slats. You buy an IKEA bed frame for £200, the slats are £30, and you can just buy slats. So if they break the slats, you go to IKEA and you just buy that one part. Same with the chest of drawers. The first thing to go into chest of drawers is always the bottom of the drawer. It bows and it falls out the bottom. take the old one out, run down to IKEA, they'll give you another one for free. So shout out to IKEA, because I am in there on a weekly basis.
And you must deal with a lot of broken beds, do you?
I've had to fix far too many myself with my bare hands on my own side.
A few broken slats. Right, that's been brilliant. Angus Johnson, LetUs, where can people reach out to you, man, and follow you?
So my Instagram is mainly private, so I'll leave it private if I may. I don't want to give anyone the wrong idea. I don't do enough work on it. I can
tell you some shenanigans going on there.
But you can find us online, letus.co.uk. Drop me an email, angus@letus.rent. At the moment, we are actually just changing email at the moment. But yeah, angus@letus.rent. Drop me an email. I'll be happy to help discuss HMOs. Grab a coffee anytime.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.